This is for the O-ring and seal repair video on the diff and axle. Got the front loader off and the backhoe off. Now I'm going to clean up the whole tractor, work on these seals and O-rings. You didn't see it before. Yeah, that's how bad it looks. Been leaking pretty good. These are the parts that will be needed to change out the O-rings and the oil seals. Oil seals are K2871-56220. Original Kubota parts. It's a two-piece seal kit. Same with that one. And then two O-rings. And these are part number K2581-15450. These four items were $178 total. Got my Kubota BX23S in my shop. I did have to take off the front loader and the backhoe in order to have some room in here, because if I hadn't taken those off, I would have no room at all. I've got the front end up on jack stands. Now I just need to remove the tires, and that will require a 19mm socket, so I'll get those taken off and then get my oil pan and drain the differential. Now that I got the tires off, the next thing I need to do is take the cotter pin off the castle nuts so that I can take the end links off of the steering cylinder. I'm going to take off the 17mm castle nut. Next thing I'll do is knock this end link out. It's a little tight on there, but I'll just tap that out. Next thing I'm going to do is remove this oil cap, and this has always been very, very stubborn. That's going to allow the oil to drain out more freely. Now I'm going to take my oil pan, put it up underneath, and undo the 14mm bolts. There's one on the bottom, there's one on the top. I'll open up the top ones first and then drain from the bottom. Does come out pretty quick. Got a little bit on the floor, most of it in the pan. The top bolt and the bottom bolt are the same size, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. Fluid doesn't even look that bad. It's not dark. Got a little discoloration. Don't be surprised when you drain your axle fluid that initially you'll be pretty impressed at how clean the fluid is, but for example, this is the last of the fluid that came out. At the very end, you can see it's pretty dark, but then this container was perfectly clean, and you can see all of the junk that's inside there. So that stuff that came through the seals, came through the O-ring, or it's metal fragments from the gears and everything else. So just be aware that all that stuff settles at the very bottom. Now that I've made it to this point, what I'm going to do is focus on one side at a time. I'm going to put this end link on here just to kind of hold it in place. Now I start taking out these 614 millimeter bolts, and do want to make sure you got the oil pan under this when you do this, because there will still be some oil. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way around. Looks like I may not even need to knock this off. It looks like it came pretty loose. Just taking the bolts off. Normally you gotta smack these off with a hammer. So far it doesn't look too bad. There's some grit in there, that's for sure. It doesn't look like any of the teeth are chewed up or anything, which is a good thing. Got this all cleaned up. It's a lot better. And then the O-ring that's going to be replaced is this one right here. And that is the K2581 15450. So that will go on there. Definitely want to clean this edge up pretty good. Bearings look good. This is where the job is going to progressively get harder to do. There's a snap ring up in here that you need to have a set of snap ring pliers to remove. And this one, what you'll have to do, you have to rotate this around until you find it, because it'll be pretty much anywhere. And then what I need to do is get it to rotate around to the front to make it easier for me to do this. Alright, the snap ring is off, so now this should slide off. This is going to want to play a little rough, but it will come off. This seal right here will have to come off, and the seal here. This seal right here is the one that I need to remove, and best way to get it out is just put a screwdriver in here, punch it down, and it's got metal inside of it, and it'll basically come loose. But you do want to be careful not to ding up anything where the seal is, because if you do, this piece alone is about $380. But that needs to come out. This is the replacement. It comes in two pieces. This is that upper portion that I mentioned on here. That's still got to come off, but this will replace it. It'll go up, and then this piece is going to go in there to replace that one. I tried to do this, and you're supposed to go at an angle, and you're supposed to bend the metal inside the seal inward, and then you just pop it out. The problem I'm having is that instead of going out this way, it's curling down into the bearing. So what I ended up doing is taking a 1/8 of an inch bit, and I drilled a hole right here. You do have to be careful because you don't want to punch into the bearings, but get that done, and then get a small screwdriver, place it in there. And the good thing about this is that you may scuff up the outside edge, but that's okay because that's not where it seals. But put the screwdriver in there. It was coming off, and then unfortunately it broke, and you have such a small space to drill that hole, so I'll probably have to do another one now. Got my second hole drilled here, and I went more to the outside this time, and it's looking like it's going to come out. Or at least the metal is bending out on that side. Probably have to do a couple more holes and then it'll pop out. right, it's out. If you just drill several holes and start prying it up, it'll pop right out. You don't have to do all that chiseling. Next thing to do is get this all cleaned up, and then when you go to put the seal on this part that's tapered upwards, it's pretty loose. That has to be facing upward. And you're going to put it on there, and the best way to put that on is you could use this, the other one, to put it on, or you can use the old one to put it on. But you do want to make sure you put it on flat, straight. You don't want it to go in crooked. But you do want to be careful using this one because you don't want to ding it up and then have issues when you go to put it on the spindle on the tractor. I got to get this off, and I know this is not going to be very cooperative. It's got a bunch of corrosion, rust, grime, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by spraying some penetrating oil on it, let it sit for a little bit, and then attempt to get it off. You'll need several flat tip screwdrivers that have skinny tips on them to see if you can get this move. What I'm going to start with is going around, because it is pretty tight on here, but I'm going to go around the top, and this is a pretty thin screwdriver, and I'm just going to tap around the edges, hopefully get it to loosen up. So I could be bringing this top edge down, but this portion right here may not be moving at all. I may just be pushing the top part down, and that's it. Looks like it's moving. Yeah, I can actually see this part moving up and down, which is a good sign. Alright, that wasn't too bad at all. Came off pretty easily. I think the penetrating oil helped out. I need to clean this up really good. It's got a ton of rust all over it. This is corroded pretty bad. Before I can put the seal back in, there's a rust ring going all the way around the top. It's pretty built up. So I'm going to take this low grit steel wool, go around, because it actually looks like the rust was creeping in where the seal sits. So I'm just going to use this to clean it up, and because what I'm afraid of is I might not get a good seal if I leave that there, because it is sticking up, so it could cause issues with the seal going in. I did use the steel wool, and unfortunately the rust is pretty rough, so it was tearing up the steel wool pretty quick. So I decided to use some rust dissolver, and hopefully that'll help some. I'll let that sit. Normally it takes about 30 minutes. I'll let that sit for about 30 minutes, rinse it all off, and then get the seal put back on. Something you can do instead of buying an expensive tool for putting the seal back on, or putting the new seal back on, is you can use a piece of PVC, and I just happen to have this old PVC, and it's the outer diameter is 2 3/8, inner diameter is 2 1/8, and what I have is a standard heat gun and some grease. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put grease on the seal. The grease is going to help prevent the PVC from staying stuck to the seal. And that's what you got to do to prep for this. And then what you have to do is start heating your PVC pipe. You don't want to get crazy with it. You want to keep it even all the way around. Heat the inside as well as the outside. And then what you're going to do is press this onto the seal. Put a set of vice grips on here just to prevent getting burned. Something else is with your PVC, make sure it's got a nice straight cut, because you could potentially damage the seal if it's not flat. You don't want to start burning the PVC. There we go. So that's on there. If you don't put the grease on, what will happen is the PVC will really adhere to the seal. If you do not put grease and it stays stuck, you're going to have to heat it up again. And unfortunately, you'll have to keep moving it in and out, because even with the grease, it tends to want to clench onto it, make it harder to get off. But if you keep moving it, it'll be okay. If you completely remove it, this is going to shrink up and the seal won't go back in it. So that's why I'm doing this. Got it in the vise here, and I'm just barely clamping onto it. And I'll be exerting downward force on it. And what I've done is I put silicone grease all the way around. I'll put some on the seal as well. And the good thing about this is I'm using this to put the seal on the spindle, and the coupler inner diameter, or inner and outer diameter for that is the same for this seal. So I can use this to get this in place. Get silicone grease on the seal, and then also on the inside got my specialty tool, and I'm going to use a wood block. This little flange right here should be sticking slightly above. Alright, that's on. Got this all cleaned up. Now I'm going to put some silicone grease on there, and then I've got my specialty tool with the seal, and I'll put some grease on there as well, and then put it on. Alright, that's on. Now, let's see if I can get my PVC pipe off. I can actually just hit it on the side, and it's coming off. There we go. Alright, that's on. Now I can put the O-ring back on here, or put the new O-ring on there. Definitely want to make sure you clean all the way around really good. Make sure there's no dirt, grit in there. Got the seal on the spindle. Got the seal on here, and the O-ring here. So now I can put this back together. Time to reassemble everything, and instead of using a floor jack, I went and got my small bottle jack that'll help keep this up while I put the snap ring on. I did it earlier. I put grease on this. Alright, so to push this on, what you want to do is put the bottle jack towards the back end and then start carefully jacking it up, and it will slide right on. Now I gotta get this snap ring where I need it, which is right there to the front. Just trying to make sure I got room to get this snap ring on there. It's a pretty tight fit. And I've got to get that snap ring right on it. Alright, so it's up there, but you do have to be careful because it may be on the front, but it won't be on the back. And just to make sure it's on there, spin it a little bit just to make sure. Alright, that snap ring is back on. Now to put this on, and this part needs to be at the very bottom. Double check to make sure your O-ring is in place. You might have to turn a little bit to make sure it's on. Now I just need to put the 6 14mm bolts in. I'm just going to hand tighten these and then torque them to spec. You can go ahead and put the 14mm bolt here and also the one on top. These bolts do have a rubberized washer, so make sure you put those back on if they came off. Alright, next is the tie rod end, the castle nut, cotter pin, and tighten that down. This side will be done. Put the castle nut on. Alright, got new cotter pins as well. The old ones were pretty mangled. Alright, this side is done except for the tire. The axle holds 3.8 quarts. I'm going to do a combination of gear oil and some stabilizer. So I'll probably do 2.8 of gear oil and 1 quart of the stabilizer. The tractor's done. Just did a post clean just to get all the fingerprints and oil and grease off of it. And before doing that, took it out, drove it around, exercised the steering and everything. Now I just need to wait for it to dry and see if there's any leaks. If there's going to be any leaks, there probably won't be any immediately. Now it's just, hopefully it just continues to run, no more issues. Because that was $178 or $177 just in O-rings and seals, and then I had to replace a tie rod end, and I did have to buy a castle nut as well. Castle nut was $11. Now I just need to clean up the backhoe and the front loader and put them back on and then get back to work.